Well, good morning. It is the appointed time for the meeting of the MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board of October the 28th, 2021. Carol, I believe we have a quorum. Do you agree? All right. Noting we have a quorum, we will call the meeting to order. You've been furnished with copies of the proposed minutes of our previous meeting. Are there additions or corrections to those minutes? Shall we approve them?
I'm not signed in yet, but
It has been moved by Zane Boatwright and seconded by Bob Nalen that we approve the minutes as presented. Please cast your ballot.
Yes,
Okay, we're going to pause for a moment, make sure everybody's hooked up.
I'm not, so I'm having to reset.
Everybody ready? Okay, everyone ready to proceed? All right then, let's go to item 3 on the agenda. Item 3A, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in your packet the MAPS 3 Revenue and Expenditure Report for the period ending September 30th, 2021. On the revenue side for the month, there's $28,319, fiscal year $184,032, and total $836,449,411. Then on the expenditure side for the month, $4,040,424. Fiscal year of $5,396,151, and total of $749,256,426. Then you also have the MAPS 3 budget and obligations report for October 8th, for the period ending October 8th of 2021. And I'll try to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions for David? All right, shall we receive it? Mike Adams has moved we receive it. It's been seconded by Zane Boatwright. Is there further discussion? Cast your vote. The item has been received. David, item B.
We try to periodically update you on what's going on with the 1% art program within the MAPS projects. And today we have Robbie Kenzel and Randy Marks here today to give you an update on what's going on, what's been done, and what's to come.
Welcome, Robbie.
Thank you. Yes, Robbie Kenzel. I'm the Arts Liaison and Program Planner in the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs, and want to thank you this morning. We come to you, both Randy and I, with great gratitude for the opportunity. We operate with all the city departments, trusts, and authorities, and with a very lean staff, and so we often keep our eyes to the road and don't veer off very much. So when we get the opportunity to present something like this, which is our portfolio of works for MAP 3, we find it to be a great opportunity even for our staff to reflect. And Randy and I were talking about it just yesterday when we were preparing for this meeting, is we also think it's time for the Arts Commission to receive the same presentation so they can celebrate this extraordinary portfolio of works. Because you really don't really understand it, until you kind of see it all in action. So I want to mention to you, it was a great leap of faith when we began the work on MAPS 3, 1% for art projects. At that time, we had one staff person back in the day. I had forgotten that until we started preparing for this. But with all the extraordinary support of city leaders and influencers like many of you in the Arts Commission, we were able to add to our staff 4 years ago. So joining me today is Randy Marks, who is our Public Art Project Manager. And we're going to share the presentation a little bit because it's a big one, and we wanted to give you a little texture as we go throughout it. So in the beginning, the Arts Commission wanted to look at the MAPS 3 portfolio of projects, just like we approach every 1% for Art project. And so at that time, Jim Loftus was the chairman of the Arts Commission, and he appointed a task force, which also was Liz Eichmann, who many of you might know, Jim Hassenbeck, who had been involved with the first maps, the original maps, Steve Hill in the mayor's office, and then myself. And so we looked at each one of the projects, and we had a methodology that is very similar to what we use on the individual projects themselves as we approach them. And that is looking at the site characteristics, looking at the project goals, whether it's a building or a park, evaluating any existing art and its needs. And this is one of the priorities that the Arts Commission holds dear, because there is not a maintenance fund in the city's budget for public art. So what often happens is when we get a 1% for art opportunity and we're notified of that, the Arts Commission likes us to look at the existing art on the site and see what kinds of needs. And we try to evaluate that every few years. And then they focus their recommendations on the use of the funds, what the process should be, because they have a standard process that was actually formalized in the original maps when I was the consultant, and then look at if there's anything additional they might add to that selection process or recommend specifically for that selection process. And then also, we researched a lot of different public art examples that could be incorporated, because what we found in the early days of the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs was that sometimes people didn't dream big enough because they didn't have a visual example of what would be possible. So some of you may not be familiar with the ordinance. I know Randy and I, we read it every day, refer to it every day, but it's 1% of the budgeted construction cost. And we always put this in bold because a lot of people think it's 1% of the total project cost, and it's not. You know, a lot of things come out of total project cost. You know, you have land costs and you have testing fees and things, but it's the actual construction budget. And then it's any new public building or public park or a major renovation of a building or park. It has to be property owned by the city and using public funds. And then the ordinance was changed in 2009 to say it shall and not may. So now it's required of every one of those building and parks projects. So in looking at the portfolio of projects in MAPS 3, we tried to determine which ones should be eligible, because we don't receive, you know, this year for MAPS 4, we've seen that eligibility has kind of been stated, which is really exciting. Back in the day of MAPS 3, when it first started, there was no eligibility statement because it was still such a very new program. And so the Arts Commission itself looked at what eligibility may be and looked at these projects. So on some of these projects, it was 100% eligible, you know, if it was like, say, the Fairgrounds Exposition Center. But on something like River Sport Rapids or the modern streetcar system, it was not 100% of the total project. It might just be a building associated with that project. So we'll give you some examples of these. So these were the projects that were eligible. And so I'm going to turn it over to Randy now, and he's going to go through some of these projects, and we're going to kind of tag team so that you'll hear more about them.
Thanks, Robbie. Good morning, board members, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Todd. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about these projects. And as I go through them, if you have any questions about them, you don't need to wait till the end. Just bring up your questions as we go through it. Be happy to address whatever is on your mind. Starting with the Bennett Event Center. This is the work called Virga. It's a $335,000 project by Cliff Garton Studios. It's comprised of two sections, each approximately 14 feet by 70 feet in length, constructed of 1/2 inch aluminum rod and all hand-formed. It also includes programmed and programmable lighting, and Cliff Garton told me this is the most complex work that he had ever designed. The images that you're seeing are created by local photographer Joseph Mills, who did a fantastic job in displaying the work. So in the Trails project, the first one up was West River Trail, and the work is Glacial Erratics. It is a $70,000 sculptural installation by local sculptor and fabricator Clint Shore. It consists of 5 constructed boulders, each approximately 9 feet by 6 feet, and the installation is located near Crystal Lake on the trail. And here is a detail of one of the elements of the sculpture. And also Will Rogers Trail. This one was a little bit unusual because we had a donated work in this particular location. So the piece titled The Wind by Florida artist Paul Ballaker was donated by Susan Coles in memory of her late husband, Alan Coles. And some of you may have seen this work several years ago when it was installed at Coles Garden. The sculpture is currently valued at around $100,000. The amount of MAPS 3 funds, 1% funds, that was spent on this was $22,930 for pickup, storage, cleaning, waxing, delivery, and installation of this work in Will Rogers Park on the trail, all done by local artist and art handler Paul Bagley. There will be a second project for Will Rogers Trail. The art award will be approximately $50,000. We haven't specified anything about it yet, but staff has had conversation with Councilman Cooper, in whose ward it will reside, about the location of the piece and the type of artwork that it will be. And here we see a close-up of the wind. And then at Lake Draper Trails, we did something a little bit different in that we started off with 3 separate projects that were all announced simultaneously to the pre-qualified artist pool. All of them had an art award of $25,000, and they were all installed more or less simultaneously. One of them took a little bit longer than the other 2, but all 3 of them were started at the same time. The first piece is B-52 by artist Dan Moore, and it's located on a small peninsula that is located fairly near to the marina, so you can actually see this piece from the marina. And this is a detail of the piece. And also at the same time, we had Booyakar, which is in the southeast part of the lake. And Booyakar was installed, as you can see, very near to the trail and on a hill that just rose up from the trail. It's about a third of the mile down a walkway from Lake Draper Drive. And here we see a close-up of the piece in a night shot. And the third work, I think I neglected to say that Booyakar was by local artist Gabriel Friedman. This work is Convergence by Don Narcomi, and it's located on the trail near where the trail and Lake Draper Drive intersect each other. And this is in the southwest quadrant of the lake. After the first 3 projects were installed, we still had some money left over. About that time, local bicycle activist Peter DeLisi came to us and said, you know, I've been on the trail a bunch of different times, and it's great to see all of the work that's out there, but it's a little bit difficult to notice B-52 because it's about 40 yards off the trail. He said, do you think that there's any way that we could do something that would draw more attention and get people out there to look at it? So we started having discussions with Park Department about what we might be able to do, and we came up with the idea that it would be good to have a sculptural bench in this area so that people would be inclined to get off their bikes, take a little time, sit there, look at B-52. This is a great vantage point for looking at the lake. It's really beautiful. And Parks donated a log, a huge log that had been harvested from one of the city parks. And we put out the call to artists for a bench, and then this work was what we were able to get. And this is Respite 360, again by artist Don Narcomi. And you can see that there's now a pathway leading out to B52. The pathway connects back to the trail. Parks did all of this. This was not 1% money. It was just something that Parks wanted to do. They also cleared the site, and where you see bare soil there, all of that is seeded in native wildflowers. So this already is a beautiful site. I've been out there at other times just to enjoy it. It's a very nice amenity, and it'll become more beautiful over time as those flowers mature. Now, you get to hear Robbie again.
So again, this is an example where 1% for art did not apply to the modern streetcar system. But as part of the modern streetcar system, we had a multimodal transportation hub, and we also were able to leverage a lot of federal money to do that. So you can see here, this is the work that we commissioned. It's a 8-foot by 9-foot by 3-foot wide sculpture called Connectivity by Marsh Scott, who is a California artist. The reason that this site in the multimodal hub was selected is, so many of you, I'm sure you've been in the hub, it's a historic site. And it has marble walls, marble floors. There's not a lot of things that we wanted to, drill into or damage at this site. So we wanted to look for something that would not be invasive to the historic envelope. But also through just investigating what the project goals were, we learned that the grand entry was going to change from the north back to the original entry of the west. And we wanted to make that west entry really prominent. And we knew that people would be using this site many hours of the day. So there is this existing shelf, and the shelf is built to handle a lot of load. And so we commissioned a work of sculpture that could be seen out the windows, and then it's also lit at night to draw attention from both the outside of the facility, but also to create a lot of drama when the facility is used for any kind of an event. So this is stainless steel and fused glass. So when the lights are shining on it, the fused glass has a lot of shimmer on it. Here you can see it from far away, but you can imagine, I didn't have a night shot of it, you can imagine what it would be at night when it's shimmery and lit. Next project, Senior Health and Wellness #1. So we commissioned a three-dimensional mural. This is, I think, the first time we commissioned a three-dimensional mural for the city's art collection. And it's for the pool area. It's by local artist Nick Bear, and it's called Out for a Swim. And then later in the project, we had some additional money left, and we'll explain what we did with that. So here is the pool area. The MAPS office requested that we could have some kind of art in place by the grand opening of the facility. And in working with the design architect on this, we learned that there had been some wall treatments that had been eliminated through some budgetary, evaluations. And so the architect was really leaning heavily for using the 1% for art money in the pool area as opposed to the lobby, because there were still a lot of good things going on in the lobby that were textural and exciting. And so this work by Nick Bear, this depicts 2 red-eared slider turtles, which are native to Oklahoma. And it's sculpted from expanded polystyrene foam, so it's hard-coated, and this will withstand any kind of elements from the pool. 51 feet wide by 16 feet high, and we were able to commission this for $18,000. I think it was completed the day before the grand opening. I mean, it was right up to the edge, and it's on the east wall of that interior pool. And now I'm going to hand it back to Randy to tell you about the next project.
What you see now is the work titled Soar, which is by local sculptor Jonathan Hills, who's also the sculpture professor at the University of Oklahoma. The operator had requested for the second project that there would be something that might in some way create a visual and auditory barrier between the building and the busyness of Rockwell. And if you've been out there, spent any time out there, you know that Rockwell is very busy and noisy. And on the east side of Wellness number 1, there is a patio that comes off of the dining area, the bocce ball courts, and also there were at one time some raised beds, planting beds. I don't know if those are still there. But the desire was to separate those somehow from the road. Jonathan Hills was selected for the project, and this sculptural fence was what was selected. Now, later on, there is a plan that the operator will plant this area at the basis. That was not included in the 1% for art, but that should be coming eventually. On Wellness 2, it was a little bit different project because it was intended to be done by an artist and also members of Wellness 2. The result was a $50,000 work by Nick Bear, and members, and this work is titled Family Ties. So we went to the Arts Commission with this idea, and we needed a recommendation from them because this was a little bit out of our norm. I think all of us have seen really well-meaning work that has been done by members of the community that just doesn't, that's nice, but doesn't meet a high artistic standard. So the Arts Commission said, do this project as a trial, but give it a lot of oversight so that we can be sure that the standard of the work that is produced is going to be very high and deserves to be part of the city collection. Nick was exactly the right person to have involved in this because he shepherded this project through a lot of different problems, the pandemic, change in operators, a variety of other things that were encountered along the way, and got it to the end result that we think this work is going to get a lot of national exposure. There are some great stories associated with it. First, notice Councilman Stone came out to the dedication a couple of weeks ago and had a long conversation with Nick about the work. And former Councilman Pete White was also there, who you see at that table. So at the dedication, certificates were given to all the members that had been participated. You could tell that they were all beaming. It was really a great experience for them. And how they participated in this was several different ways. So if you notice the circular elements in the image on the right, those are a little bit unusual. Those are tiles that are created out of resin impregnated fabric. So members brought in pieces of fabric that had meaning to them. For example, several of the tiles are made out of one of the members' wedding dress. There are other stories associated with others of these tiles, and they were able to create these tiles and integrate them in the work, and you can see they almost have a jewel-like quality. Other elements of the work were created out of clay. The clay's rolled out, cut out into this shape, dried, fired, and then it's glazed, and then fired again, and then you have a usable piece. The members collaborated in choosing which of the native animals were going to be included in the overall composition, and Nick was in charge of the total composition, which also included painted elements. So again, we were extremely happy with the way this turned out. It did exactly what we hoped it would do. Another outcome of this was that the members who got involved in this work have now become interested in continuing on and being involved in more art programs that are being provided by Wellness 2. So we were very, very happy to see all of that. And then at Wellness 3, we're looking at something, again, totally different. So the work that is entitled Seeds of Change will be a $100,000 mixed media and multimedia work by Tony Morton and a team of 4 other artists. $76,500 of this was from 1% for Art funds, and then working with our colleagues in planning, we were able to get a community development block grant for $23,500 to leverage that 1% money up a little bit more. The artists are going to be able to do a little bit more with $100,000 on this, what's going to be an extraordinary piece of work. So it is the first work in Oklahoma City that will incorporate projection, mapping, and video to tell the story of the development of the Black community in Oklahoma City, starting with the story of Inman Page, who was the first president of Langston and later principal at Douglas High School. And if everything works properly, I think we will see video. See, well, we have the video, but lost the audio. The image of the gentleman that you saw there was Inman Page. It goes on and tells a story about Zelia Bro, who was his daughter and longtime music instructor at Douglas High School, who taught Ralph Ellison, James Stewart, and various others, and had a huge effect. Also, Charlie Christian had a huge effect on the development of music in Oklahoma City. So you may have noticed let's see, let me check this. Okay, let's go back here again. You notice in the lower left-hand corner that there is a monitor. So anybody that comes into Wellness 3 will be able to go to this monitor and pull up stories on that monitor. So the artists are going to be interviewing, we don't know how many, it could be hundreds of individuals who will be able to tell their story about their life. So this is meant to not just celebrate the well-known people whose names we know, but all those people that have contributed to the Black community, but the larger community in Oklahoma City just by going about their daily lives. And not only, it doesn't just end when this project is installed. Langston University, the operator of the facility, will have the opportunity to continue adding to this through time, and this database can also be accessed anywhere in the world on the World Wide Web. So this is a far-reaching work, and again, extraordinary for Oklahoma City, and we think, again, that this is going to receive a lot of national exposure. And then on Wellness 4, this is the work that is entitled Infinite Arches by Rachel Micah Weiss. It is a $73,000 work, and it's constructed of 5 different components that are all hand-dyed, custom-dyed nylon rope, and you can see that they kind of float serenely like clouds above the exercise equipment that is in the exercise room. Fabrication is underway, and I'll note that Rachel did take a day or 2 off to have a baby, but she's back at work on various aspects of this, and we anticipate it to be installed before the grand opening of the Wellness 4 course, and she'll be coordinating very, very closely with Tony Ochoa, who is the MAPS project manager, and with the GC on this project to make sure that there's a seamless installation of this work. And here is another view of it.
So again, River Sport Rapids improvements was a project where not 100% was eligible for 1% for art, but we were able to focus on the buildings themselves. And we worked on 3 different projects with this one. The first 2 I'm going to show you, and the last one Randy will present to you. But the first one is Compass Rose, there to the left of the screen. Compass Rose is a 20-foot by 17-foot wide sculpture that was donated by Leadership Oklahoma City to the city of Oklahoma City. Extraordinarily valuable piece of work. Owen Morrell is known worldwide. And one of the things in the gift acceptance agreement that had not been accomplished, like I mentioned, the Arts Commission really wants us to evaluate works of art on site first to see what the needs are before we commission new works. There were some things that we had committed to do that weren't quite yet done yet. One of them was a donor recognition plaques. We also noted that there were a lot of foundational issues in the pad. It was accepting water, and all the water was seeping in and creating a lot of weep holes on the outside of the sculpture. Some of the screws that were used in the sculpture itself had started to rust, and there was no lighting. And the work is really prominent from I-40, so we really wanted to fix the lighting and make sure that it would, draw people's eyes, to the Boathouse District, so they might want to come back. So we used approximately, looks like about $12,000 to do all of those things. And then the other thing that came up, you'll see on the right there, this is Beacon by Bruce White. This had been a work of art that had been previously commissioned by the city, but it was located in kind of an odd place at the Matt Hoffman Skate Park on the south side of the river. And because it was repeatedly vandalized, probably wasn't the right site. We looked at that as an opportunity for relocation. And in working with Mike Knopp at the Boathouse District, he talked to us about the pump track and that was a new facility that they were adding and what it was supposed to draw. And he really was wondering if there was anything that we could do through the art program to draw interest to that destination, because you really have to go all the way to the other side and kind of know where you're going to find the pump track, because it doesn't rise above the ground, right? It's just at ground level. And so the idea came up, why don't we see about relocating this work? And so we did. We cleaned it up, removed the other site, and we spent almost $10,000. It's the value of the work itself is $42,000, then we spent almost $10,000 to go ahead and relocate it. We know at some future point the Boathouse District has committed to bringing light to it. It's just something we could not afford through the 1% program. But you can see a lot of the things that we do are leveraging other types of funding through the 1% program and MAPS 3. And then Randy's going to present the next one to you.
When the Whitewater facility funds were allocated for completion of the building, that released some more 1% funds for this area, and staff worked with architect Tony Blatt, the project architect, and Jim Shepard, the MAPS project manager on this particular project. Tony had designed this space with the idea of there being lighted sculpture going in to that space. The lighting was already installed, and so the artwork was just going to take advantage of that particular lighting, and the result was this work, entitled appropriately Whitewater, by Rick and Tracy Bewley of Art Fusion Studio. And it is a $22,000 sculpture. There are 24 pieces of kiln-formed, slumped, and fused glass that make up this piece, each individually installed in the Whitewater facility. And you can see that it creates this really rich, watery environment. And this is a close-up of some of the actual elements of the work. And then for for the major park, there are two elements. Robbie's going to talk about Upper Park first.
Yes, taking flight light as a feather. So this one has an extraordinary history. Some of you might have seen a very large 30-foot diameter ball that was originally proposed and commissioned for this work. It has been experienced in the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs. Sometimes things happen after you commission work that cause you to go back and change course. And so extraordinary works of the magnitude of what were originally proposed. This is over a $500,000 commission. There are things outside of your control that happen, and a work of art was proposed across the street that was too similar to what the city had already commissioned. And in cases like that, we have contractual obligations with the artist, not to embarrass them. And in the world of art, this would have been an embarrassment. And we did use everything in our power to find out if that work was going to move forward. And we do understand that it will at some point. COVID happened, but we still have no doubt that it will move forward at some point. So when this was brought to the attention of the Arts Commission, they asked staff to go back and work with the artist on contract and the original selection committee and bring back a redesign. and take that then to City Council to see if they would approve that. And so we did, and so this work is recommissioned, and we expect this, it's still called Light as a Feather in the same concept. It was inspired because the artist team, Jason Klomoski and Leslie Chang, they are actually their spouses. And during the course of this work, they had had a baby. And as they were trying to redesign, they were thinking about, in a park, what are the things that fascinate children? And it became obvious to them that as birds fly and feathers drop, every child cannot resist, going to try to pick up that feather and oohing and awing over it. So this became the inspiration for the design. The selection committee loved it, and so did the Arts Commission. And then City Council was able to approve the agreement. We ended up moving contingency money that we had set aside. I know David Todd, being a great program manager as he is with MAPS 3, had advised us in the beginning of undertaking this project to leave a large amount of contingency in our budget, because this is a very difficult corner to put a work of art on. It's the northeast corner of Upper Scissortail Park. There's a lot of things going on underground that you may not see, but he had advised us wisely. And so this one will be less invasive to the underground systems that are there, and so we were able to add that contingency back in the budget. We expect this to be installed by the anniversary of the opening of Scissortail Park in 2022. And that's a night shot.
In Lower Park, we have a work that is entitled Rio, Florida, by a team comprised of local artist Beatrice Majorca and internationally known artist Corin Rolstad. So this is a $121,000 sculptural installation that will be located in Knuckle Park, immediately below Overlook Hill. And this is the image on the right is more of a drone shot, but if you were standing on Overlook Hill, you would look down and see the sculpture looking somewhat like that. So the work is inspired by the wildflowers that will be growing in other parts of the park that are more naturalistic, and then also the floral motifs that are a major design element used across Hispanic culture. And there's, I forgot that there was animation. So that was Overlook Hill, and there is Knuckle Plaza. And there is a view of the work from ground level looking up. And then for the convention center, the work chosen was Virtual Sky by Narduli Studio. And might note here that on this and also on the Scissortail Park project, the first Scissortail Park project, Arts Commission had recommended, because of the size of the work, that we hire a national art consultant to work with the committees. And we worked with Helen Lessick in both cases. Helen is well-known and well-respected in the art world and does work all over the United States as a consultant and is a working artist herself. So this is started out, the call was for $1.3 million work during installation. As we all remember, a lot of things happened, and it took everybody involved, all of MAPS, planning, our department, the MAPS project managers, the GC, all working together to make sure that we overcame the problems that were encountered during the installation of the work. It all worked out, and the piece was installed and working before substantial completion of the building. So when we have very large, complicated projects like this, well, we hold back contingency, of course, on every particular project, but particularly when we have large projects like this, we hold back a larger amount just because we all know that things happen. In this particular case, it was very good to have that money. No extra funds were allocated for the project. It's all 1% funds, but the funds were there to be used. I want to note here that I want to call out Grady Whiteneck of Flint Cove, doing a fabulous job of helping to coordinate everybody. Grady did an outstanding job. It was a pleasure to work with him, as it was with the MAPS project managers, Dwayne McAllister and Jason Fugate. And I just want to give a little shout out to all of the MAPS project managers. It is always a privilege to work with these guys. Real professionals, and we enjoy it, and we enjoy the camaraderie and cooperation that we have in working together. think we have some animation on this too. Now let me go back here. Okay, it looks like the animation didn't make it through. Oh, here it is, okay. And that the video was done by local artist and videographer Scott Vo. So we're always happy to see when national artists use local artists to document their work or to help in the installation of the work. So we see that as a huge added benefit. Let's see. Back to you.
So this is our last one. I know virtual sky is one of my favorite things to drive. When I leave the office at night to go home from work, it's one of my favorite things to go drive by, and I can't wait till Light as a Feather is also installed right across the street. So this is not 1% for art work, but we're hoping to use 1% for art money to be able to accept it and install it. And so the city was approached in 2019 because one of our well-known worldwide local celebrities, Wayne Coyne, had a almost 20-foot square work of art installed in the Womb, which is what used to be Factory Obscura now. He had it installed in the ceiling, and it was a work that he created with Damien Hirst, who he had met years before, and they had created it together in Bristol, England, in Hirst's studio. And so this is this work. At the time, the only project site we could find for a 20-square-foot painting was the convention center. We talked to the maps office, we talked to the architect, and we had identified 3 possible spaces in the facility. But in talking to the original selection committee for the 1% for art for the convention center, they really wanted to wait until the 1% for art work, Virtual Sky, was installed before we went back and examined, would this really go with the convention center? So we did take that to the selection committee last month, and they agreed that they would like to recommend that the city accept the work on loan for a 10-year period. The terms of the agreement are that we would use 1% for art funds to transport the created work, which we provided technical assistance to Mr. Coyne and his agent to actually be able to properly prepare it for storage. And they've kept it climate controlled. And so we will, to transport it to the site and to begin the 30-day stretching period, which you have to keep it in the environment and stretch it daily for 30 days. The operator has also indicated that the right time to do this will be December of this year before their schedule gets crazy, and they have a site in mind to do this. And the kinds of hoisting that will be required for this major painting and custom cleating and all of that, it'll be $58,000. So we've taken this to the Arts Commission last month, and they also agreed that this would be a really great opportunity for the city to have this type of work in the convention center. We know the operator is super excited about it. But this was the last piece that we wanted to show you. We will plan to use an art marker that will have a QR code so that it will go directly to the city's website and have a virtual exhibition catalog like we did with, I know it's not a MAPS project, but the Embark Convention Center garage. We have QR codes so it goes to a virtual exhibition catalog where we explain a little bit more about the work. And also, as the Arts Commission reviewed this, since the monitor cannot be moved that is used below for the conference scheduling, they would like us to work with the operator and see if perhaps that could include some information about the work that would rotate through that schedule, which we thought was a great idea. So we are preparing loan agreements right now to take this to City Council to see if we can gain some authorization to accept a work on loan for 10 years about this. So you can see with all of these, and here's Wayne Cohen. The work is beautiful, mystical, exploding sun clouds, taste metallic, as you would expect. An extraordinary title for an extraordinary work. But it will be recognized worldwide, and it'll be right here in Oklahoma City if all goes as planned. So as you can see from all of these projects, Randy and I could not make these happen without the involvement of a lot of different stakeholders. The system that we use for art selection requires a lot of volunteer time from some really special people. And so, and many of you have participated in that, many of you or might in the future. And so we encourage you to do that because it gives you an entirely different perspective on what goes into art selection. It's a very long process, but always very rewarding to kind of know what happened from the inside. And so with that, did you have any questions for Randy or I?
Robbie, just a moment, please. Zane is going to have to leave in 5 minutes, and and we have some action items. So if you have questions for Robbie and Randy, I'm going to ask you to hold those for just a moment, because there is an action item from Zane's committee and he has to leave in 5 minutes. So if you will look at your agenda, we're still under item Roman numeral 3, and I'm going to call your attention to item G. David, that is the one from the trail, and that's one from your committee, Zane?
Yes, sir.
All right. David, would you tell us about that?
Yes, sir. So item G is recommend approval of change order number 3 and amendment number 2, project M3T005, maps 3 West River Trail realignment, vicinity of West I-40, Service Road, and Melvin Young Boulevard, an increase of $43,655.64 from Ward 3. So I have to find that here. So this is the West River Trail realignment that we've talked about before. This should be the last change order and amendment prior to final acceptance on the project. The majority of this item is the quantity adjustments within the amendment. But on the change order side, there was some vertical fence posts. So there's barbed wire on top of the fence posts out there, and they were leaning at 45-degree angle towards the trail, and we found it better to get those up and away so that somebody didn't rake across those and cut themselves. So there's money to redo those. But then back to the amendment part, this is just quantities as we get out into the field and do the project, some increase, some decrease. There's a listing within the document if you're interested in the actual quantities, but this is all what I would consider routine type action for a project like this, and this does come with the approval from the Trails and Sidewalks Subcommittee.
Thank you. Zane, any comments from your committee?
No further comments.
All right. Shall we approve it? It has been moved by Zane Boatwright that we approve it, seconded by D. Morales. Is there further discussion? Cast your vote. Okay. Okay, I'm not seeing that we've all voted. Okay, that item passed and has been adopted. So that also takes us to item C. All right, David, you want to tell us about item C?
Yes, sir. So item C is recommend approval of amendment number 1 to engineering services contract with Kimley Horn and Associates, project M3W005, maps 3 sidewalks, phase 5, 4 locations, increase of $27,050, wards 1, 7, and 8. So this is the additional sidewalks that we've talked about because of the money that was left over in the sidewalk projects that we've congregated into a new project. As we continue to get further along, we identified more money and we were able to expand the scope of the project, and this is additional engineering fee to do that scope. What you will see, because we are real close to the end of our funding, you will see when this project comes to you that there will be alternates on there, and those alternates are to make sure that we can stay within budget and hopefully award those alternates. So it's really just a bookkeeping
All right.
method. And this also comes with the approval from the Trails and Sidewalks Subcommittee.
Okay, thank you, Zane. Shall we, are there questions? Shall we approve it? Let's see, we have been moved by Zane Boatwright, seconded by Bob Nayland. Is there further discussion? Cast your vote. The item has been adopted. Thank you, and thank you, Zane. Okay, great. Well, I do want to say to Robbie and Randy, thank you for being patient with us. We wanted to get these action items moved forward while Zane was here. Now, we're going to go back and see if anyone on the panel here has a question for Robbie and Randy. Well, I do want to make this comment. We've been seeing a lot of you all for a decade or more now, and it's really great to see the result of how this has all worked. I just commend you for a job well done. All of them are so thoughtfully done and done with such patience and skill, just like the patience you've given us today. So we just want to say thank you for a job well done. You're making us proud in all of these art pieces, and it's amazing the variety we have and the thought that's gone into it. So just want to offer our congratulations and thank you for making this all come alive. Thank you very much. All right, that then takes us back to our agenda. If there are no questions of them, then we're going to go back to item D under item 3.
Thank you. Item D is recommend approval of assignment of architectural services contract, project M3-H004, project MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center number 3, 3820 North Lincoln Boulevard, between the city, Hornby, Blatt Architects, and Blatt Architects PC, Ward 7. So this is just an assignment of contract. David Hornby, who you've all seen do presentations and was lead architect on the project, has retired. And Tony Blatt is taking over the company. He was his partner, but now he will be the sole partner on there, so they are changing the name of the company. It's still going to be the same people with the exception of David Hornby. Same plans, nothing changes but the name of the firm on this contract.
Well, doesn't he seem a little young to retire, Bob, don't you think? Okay. Questions or discussion on this? Shall we approve it? Move that we approve it by Bob Nayland, seconded by Mike Adams. Further discussion? Cast your vote. The item has been passed and approved. That brings us to item E.
Item E is recommend approval of assignment of architectural services contract, project M3R008, MAPS 3 Whitewater Facility, second floor renovation, 800 Riversport Drive, between the city, Hornbeek Blatt Architects, and Blatt Architects, PC, Ward 7. Same situation. Hornbeek Blatt had both of these contracts active. The actual work at the Riversport is pretty much complete, with the exception of this filtration project we're going to talk about in a minute.
All right. It's been moved by Mike Adams that we approve it, seconded by Bob Nayland. Further discussion? Cast your vote. It was passed. That brings us to item F.
Pardon me. Item F is recommend award and approval of pricing agreement for bid number 22001, filtration equipment procurement for project M3R009D, MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Sport Rapids Park water filtration system improvements, 800 Riversport Drive, $716,702 in Ward 7. So this is continuing with our attempt to get the water filtered close to swimming pool standards. And this is a bit out of the, well, it's a lot out of the ordinary bidding process that you've seen for construction projects. This item that we're looking at today is actually a procurement item And the reason we did it this way is so that we could identify a single system. When we bid this before, there were too many various systems out there, and it was very confusing, and we couldn't get apples to apples with contractors. And if you recall, we had bids anywhere from $2 million to $9 million. So it was just crazy. So what we've done, in order to comply with the Competitive Bidding Act, we have done this procurement contract. And this procurement contract says for $716,702, we will buy this, or the contractor will take this equipment and install it, and we will have another project that comes out for the installation of the project. All we are going to be obligated for on this project is the production of shop drawings, which is about $25,000, right in that ballpark. That way the contractor will know what he is obligated to put in, and there will be no confusion. Let's say that that bid comes in over our budget, we are not obligated to buy this. If it comes in within our budget, then we will pursue it. That's how we've arranged this so that it works for us. I'm sure there's questions.
Well, shall we start with our lawyer? Bob, you have any questions? Okay.
It's
Okay.
unique. It has been done by other city departments in order to get past some of the difficulties in systems like this.
Other questions?
So David, we're out 25,000 regardless,
Yes, sir.
and we think the equipment, the 700,000 is the purchase price of the equipment we're shooting for?
That will be the purchase, because this is an agreement. This locks in the price for this equipment. What the other bid that we will put out is for a contractor to install it.
Okay, and we have the money in our budget for both of those, acquisition and the installation?
We believe we do within the budget that we have, but that's why this agreement says that if for some reason we're not within our budget, we're not obligated to buy this.
If you can't get it installed for within the budget, then we won't be buying the equipment.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Dee, any recommendation from your committee?
It was recommended by our committee.
All right. Shall we approve it? It's been moved by Bob Nalen that we approve it, seconded by Michael Adams. Is there further discussion? Cast your vote. The item has been approved and passed. We've already acted on item G under 3. That takes us then to item 4. Any staff or our members of the advisory board have new business to bring before us?
No, sir.
All right. That brings us to item 5 then. Any Citizens Advisory Board subcommittee reports in addition to what we've already heard? All right then, David, that brings us to your update, item 6.
Just real quickly, I can tell you that the lower park is well under construction in between the rain events. It's been a little difficult here lately, but they put in 30 or 40 trees down there, and they're waiting for the first frost to start putting in another 300 to 400 this season. You'll see some of the seeding that's done. A lot of the final dirt is done. The hill that you saw within the arts presentation is completed, and the grass is all in there. So it's making great progress. Also, tremendous progress on Wellness Center 3. The structural steel on about half the building is up. Still need the weather to cooperate with us a little bit out there, and especially on Wellness Center 4, the weather has kept them bogged down a little bit, but we continue to work through it. It's nothing to be concerned about, nothing out of the ordinary. The ramps were completed at the convention center, if you remember that discussion with those handicap ramps. That's all I have to report.
All right. That brings us to item 7. Any? Yes,
David,
Mr.
I
Michael?
remember several years ago, we bought a lot of trees for the upper park a year or so in advance of planting them. Are the trees we're planting in the lower part of that inventory, or?
No, so these are all new, and we chose not to do that because of some of the difficulties we had in that. So the contractor's providing all of those those trees.
Okay.
But I can tell you that he has procured, I understand, that he's procured the majority of them already. They're sitting in nursery, either acclimating or just sitting there growing bigger.
Other questions for David? Okay, that brings us to item 7, comments by board. Any comments by the board? I only want to mention one thing that David and I discussed prior to the meeting. We had asked staff if they would prepare a resolution of appreciation and commendation for my carrier service on the Convention Center Subcommittee, and they got that done in a timely way. But we did not have a Convention Center Subcommittee meeting this month, and we would really like to bring it forward with their recommendation of approval. So that was not put on the agenda for today, but we would expect to see it next month. Just wanted you to know, we haven't forgotten that, but that will be forthcoming after it goes through the subcommittee. Okay, any staff members have comments?
No, sir.
Are there citizens here that have asked to be heard, ladies? All right. That being the case, then that brings us to item 8, adjournment. Is there any further business to be conducted? We're adjourned. Thank you.